Trump's got a plan for homelessness. You want to hear it? Here it is. Here we go.
All kinds, from all places, lying along the roads. That's without the tents. And then you look at the tents and the homeless, and you say, what's happening to this great bastion? Perhaps some people will not like hearing this, but the only way you're going to remove the hundreds of thousands of people, and maybe throughout our nation, millions of people we're talking about, and help make our cities clean, safe, and beautiful again, is open up large parcels of inexpensive land in the outer reaches of the cities, bring medical professionals, including doctors, psychiatrists, psychologists, drug rehab specialists, build permanent bathrooms and other facilities, make them good, make them hard, but build them fast, and create thousands and thousands of high-quality tents, which can be done in one day. And you have to move people out. Now, some people say, oh, that's so horrible. No, what's horrible is what's happening now. Because now they're in tents, but most of them aren't even tents that function.
So his idea is to move him to a bigger tent. Hey, again, at least it's something. Joe Biden is never even talking about it. At least he's talking about it. What I would say to him is like, hey, you were president for 4 years. You could do this in one day. What the fuck? Why didn't you do it? Why should I believe you now? You had 4 years. You didn't do it. Why would you? What makes me think you're going to do it now? With your big idea, do it in one day with bigger tents. But I'm going to give him credit here. At least he's talking about it. No one else even brings it up. No one brings it up. At least Trump's bringing it up. And that's not the solution. I'll tell you what the solution is in a second. So why don't we put those tents on Trump's golf courses? Okay. And Mexico will pay for it. Funny. But here is how. This is what you should do. Finland fixed their homelessness problem. How'd they do it? They gave people fucking houses. In Finland, the number of homeless people has fallen sharply. The reason? The country applies the housing first concept. Those affected by homelessness receive a small apartment and counseling without any preconditions. 4 out of 5 people affected thus make their way back to a stable life. And this is cheaper than accepting homelessness. So it saves money. If you give people homes, it saves money. It's you want to hear it? This is what they did in Mississippi. Mississippi fixed homelessness. Did you know this? Not California, Mississippi. You want to see it? Here we go.
Mississippi usually ranks among the worst in the United States in terms of education, poverty, public health, or crime. But there's one metric that Mississippi ranks the best in. They have the lowest rate of homelessness out of any state. This is because, despite their poverty and racism and so on, Mississippi goes the Finland route for solving the homeless problem. They build houses and they put people in them. Good job, Mississippi. Contrast this with the wealthy, liberal, high IQ California, with a homeless rate more than 11 times the rate of the supposedly backwards, gun-toting redneck states. For whatever reason, California will do anything to reduce the homeless population, except build more houses, and as a result, their state just gets worse and worse. Zoning laws prevent anyone from building houses more than 3 stories tall, and when new houses and buildings are proposed, the plans can be shot down by angry residents so long as they act angry enough. The population of San Francisco has basically stayed the same since 1960, but rents are through the roof because every time a home is demolished or otherwise taken off the market, a new one can't be built to fill the gap. When California passed rent control measures in the 90s, it actually led to renters paying collectively $2.9 billion more than they had been paying before. New constructions and luxury houses were exempt from the rent control, so landlords simply converted existing housing into luxury houses, obtained the new building sticker, and proceeded to increase the rent while not actually adding any more houses to the total, and in fact taking away from the number of affordable houses. Sometimes it can take years just to get government.
So that happened to me. I had an apartment in Hollywood, and my landlord he had a big idea because he couldn't raise our rent. It was rent controlled. And so he tried to incentivize us to move out because he was going to make it into luxury apartments, which then is no longer rent controlled, just like that. And he did it. It worked out. I was ready to move. And I drive, so now that was another whole apartment building that's no longer rent controlled. They built in loopholes around this. So the point is, the way you help get rent relief when it's too high and how you help homelessness is you build more houses. And they just won't do that in the United States. They just won't do it in California. They just won't build more houses. Right now, a regular shitty house in California costs $1 million. I'm talking 1,000 square feet. Costs $1 million. It's the regular house. And they just won't build more houses. And I don't know what's going to... so here, they did it in Houston. Houston moved 25,000 people from the streets into homes of their own. I wonder how they did it. I'm going to bet they built houses. Let's see. Together, they've gone all in on housing first, a practice supported by decades of research that moves the most vulnerable people straight from the streets into apartments, not into shelters, and without first requiring them to wean themselves off drugs or complete a 12-step program or find God or find a job. You give them a house first. So now the way they work it is they make them do all that shit, and then we'll give you a house. And then we'll help you get... No, you give them a house first, and then you help them get sober. And then you help them find a job. American cities could house everyone if they chose to. This is in the New York Times. Our housing crisis is a symptom of America's wealth and its indifference. Again, we can end homelessness like that. With the money we sent to Ukraine, we could build enough housing to end homelessness. Isn't that crazy to think about? They just won't do it. That's called the government. The gears have seized up, as Chris Hedges says. They no longer can work to help regular people. The only time the government works is to grift money to the people who own the government. And that's the military-industrial complex, Wall Street, big pharma, fossil fuel companies, and big tech. That's when the government can work. But if you need housing, can't get it done. Healthcare, How about a vaccine? We could do that. A couple $100 billion. The federal government already provides housing vouchers to help some lower-income families. The families pay 30% of their monthly income towards rent, and then the government picks up the rest. But instead of giving vouchers to every needy family, the government imposes an arbitrary cap on the total spending. So a lot of people who need that help don't get it, and they end up homeless. 3 and 4 eligible families don't get vouchers. The program costs about $19 billion a year. Vouchers for all eligible households would cost an additional $41 billion a year. The Congressional Budget Office estimates. So that about the kind of money we sent to Ukraine this year, we could have ended homelessness. They just don't want to do it. The U.S. has... Who cares? Give me shelter. Oh, so now you go, well, wait, maybe we need a good Democrat like Gavin Newsom. Maybe he'll fix it. Want to know what Gavin Newsom's plan is for homelessness? Gavin Newsom's big idea to tackle California's homelessness problem is a new program to provide court-ordered treatment for homeless residents with severe mental illness. The governor wants lawmakers to act quickly to pass the plan, which would target up to 12,000 residents who need the That's his plan. That's his whole plan to help fix homelessness. He's going to give mental health help to 12,000 residents. Not going to give them homes. Not going to give them apartments. Not going to give them anything. By the way, there's 160,000 homeless people in California. He's going to target 12,000 of them and have them go see a counselor. That's what he's going to do. No, Jagoff. You take the $40 billion surplus you were talking about last year that California has, and you build housing. Well, Jimmy, that sounds really expensive. How can we afford it? It's cheaper than having homeless people. You want to know what happened in Finland? Creating housing for the people cost money. In the past 10 years, 270 million euros were spent on the construction in Finland for homeless people. And their Housing First program with 2 M's. However, this is far less than the cost of homelessness itself. Why? What do you mean? Well, when people are in emergency situations, emergencies are more frequent. Assaults, injuries, breakdowns, the police, healthcare, and justice system are more often called upon to step in, and this also costs money. And if you lock up somebody, you know how much it costs in California to lock somebody up? $70,000 for one person a year. Wouldn't you want to go to those people and go, hey, look, we'll give you $50,000. Just don't do anything bad.
Yes.
Here's $50,000. Go get an apartment. Just stay out of trouble. In comparison, Housing First is cheaper than accepting homelessness. For instance, in Finland, the state spends 15,000 euros less per year per homeless person than they did before they started housing them. So it would save us all money, and yet they still won't do it. So that's how you end homelessness. And everybody's dunking on Trump on Twitter for having this plan of building a bigger tent. And I say, thank God, at least somebody's talking about it. Joe Biden never talks about the homeless people. Nancy Pelosi, Mitch McConnell. Who the fuck is talking about homeless people? Nobody. You ever heard a progressive politician talk about them and their plan to help them? No. Nobody. Trump at least is getting the conversation going. It's a bad idea, of course. But now let's do something. Of course, nobody will. They'll just make fun of Trump. And they'll never point out that Gavin Newsom ain't doing shit. He won't even give him a bigger tent. At least Trump will give him a bigger tent. Come see our stand-up comedy. We'll be in Los Angeles, Bakersfield, Indianapolis, Louisville, Cincinnati, Tulsa, Oklahoma City, Detroit, lots more. Go to JimmyDoreComedy.com for a link for all our tickets.